Hello, beloved.
Welcome to the Sacred Sister podcast,
where we normalize the magic
and sacralize the mundane.
In this podcast, we open up dialogue on metaphysical subjects, self-healing tools, expanding consciousness, and deepening awareness.
To support you in co-creating a life full of healing, meaning, and magic.
I'm Britt, a self-study entrepreneur, spiritual wellness coach, and self-healing song channeler.
And I'm Hannah, an astral researcher, priestess, and inner peace and transformation coach.
And together,
we're here to serve as your Sacred Sister.
Let's dive in. Hello, dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Sacred Sister Podcast. I'm Britt, and today we're going to be diving into developing psychic abilities and the 7 clairs, having deep dialogue with Coral Scarlett Newberry. I have to admit, this is my 3rd time recording this intro, and I keep getting this weird feedback that my husband's not going to be able to work with. He's our sound engineer, and I'm really just crossing fingers that this recording goes well. So it's super funny. You might hear me call Coral Scarlett, that's her middle name, a couple times in this episode. There was a couple years that my sister, Charity, used to go by Scarlett. Even to this day, Scarlett is a part of her email address. And Coral reminded me of my sister Charity so much when we first met. And I learned later that it's because Coral has strong Scorpio energy that I'm sure Hannah is going to talk about later. So my sister is Scorpio sun, and I was so excited at the, time that I was going to introduce them together. I knew Coral for probably a year before I introduced my sister to her at my mom's memorial service after my mom passed away last year. And they did hit it off right away. It's so sweet whenever I connect to little people. I'm such a Gemini weaver of the web. I love connecting people to each other. And I feel like that's such a perfect testimony to this podcast as well, because that's a part of what we're doing here is connecting you with people that we have found incredibly inspiring, and we hope to, invite you to be curious at who these people are as well. And we hope that you enjoy the conversations that we're having with them. So Coral, oh my gosh. I love Coral. I love this segment that we do where we let you know how we came to know Coral and what has led her to be one of the featured guests on this podcast. So Coral is one of the 2 people that I've ever met in my life that I've gotten this kind of feeling about. So a couple summers ago, I met this woman, Jill, who wound up being a very pivotal figure in my life. And I remember watching her walk across the meadow at Spirit Weavers, this spiritual women's gathering that I go to, and seeing this blazing, brilliant, bright purple hair. And I was like, oh my gosh, just like watching an angel walking towards me, because I was like, oh my gosh, what kind of person must you be to be able to dye your hair like a wild color like that? At the time, I was so attached to my hair, and dyeing my hair such a vibrant color, just was probably the edgiest edge of the universe for me. And, I became great friends with this person. I love in taking different perspectives, different backgrounds, different stories from people. Like learning the ways that they've become exactly who they are is my greatest passion. And Coral is definitely one of those people for me. If you've never met Coral before, she is so tatted up. She is so edgy. She's such a badass. She's the kind of woman that I look at and I'm just like, oh my goodness, who is this goddess? So most notably, the tattoo that really drew me to her and also equally intimidated me to her is these beautiful dots that she has that connect her inner corners of her eyes. They come up over the bridge of her nose, and they're just these beautiful sacred dots. I can't even tell you how many tattoos she has. Probably I don't even know. It could be up to 70. I have no clue. But there's something about her energy, her persona that is just so enchanting. And I know she's probably listening to this just so blushing. I met her at this venue that Hannah was taking this priestess school at. Hannah's a priestess, and I went to a workshop that was being held at this place. And I think it might have been on Egyptian goddesses. And I really just wanted to go to kind of like be surrounding myself with more higher minded people. And I didn't really know very much about Egyptian gods and goddesses, but Egyptian anything like really calls to me. I love learning about ancient civilizations, and I decided to go. So I saw Coral at the first one, and then I went to the second one. And I think that's where I first talked to Coral, and I introduced myself, and, you know, it was such an edge for me. And I just had a short conversation with her. And then I think it was Hannah that invited her to the moon ceremony here at my house. So as a quick backstory for anyone that hasn't heard, Sacred Sister Podcast used to be Sacred Sister Gathering here in Las Vegas. Hannah and I would host new and full moon gatherings twice a month here at my house or her house in Las Vegas. And they were just these women's circles that we would get together and do deep energy work, do deep, like sacred healing work with one another. And we did that for the entire year of 2018. And then at the end of 2018, we started to feel the pull to transition Sacred Sister Gathering into Sacred Sister Podcast. And Coral was one of the very first people that was coming to the first gatherings, and she stayed the entire time. I think she's like the OG, as a matter of fact. I think she's like the first person to come that lasted the entire time. And she came to like all the gatherings. She said the first night that she came here, I remember opening the door and she looked like she was out of her comfort zone. And I was like, you know, welcome to my house, and opening the doors up. I think this is such a testimony to like getting outside of your comfort zone and doing something that's like uncharacteristic for you. In Coral's case, it was coming to a women's gathering, coming to hang out with women, to do moon ceremony. And I remember like halfway through the night seeing her all curled up on my couch, just looking like as tiny as she possibly could. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, you know, who are you? What are you about? What's going on here? And she's like, I don't do this very often. And I was like, what? And she goes, you know, meeting up with women and stuff. And I was like, oh, bless your heart. Like, thank you for coming here. For those of you that are not a part of women's circles or not a part of ceremony circles, can you imagine, you know, getting outside of your comfort zone and deciding that you're going to go meet with other women and do deep sacred work together? I know that for a lot of people that haven't ever been to moon ceremony, you're probably like, what is deep sacred work together? What is doing energy work in a circle with women? And, you know, these are things that you just have to go to one of the gatherings to find out. It's sacred work that you can't really describe at the level of potency that you could experience it in circle. So I really give Coral a lot of kudos for coming out and, you know, meeting with all of us. She has been such a beautiful flower to watch blossom, having her private clients and working with people on developing their own psychic energies. We're going to have Coral's contact information in the description of this episode, and we talk about it a little bit more at the end of the episode. So Coral, thank you so much for floating your little fairy mama self into our lives. We are so blessed to know you. And without much more backstory, let's dive into Hannah's astrology episode, and then we'll dive into the interview. Thanks. Enjoy.
Thank you, Brittany. Hi, everybody. This is Hannah. Let's dive into the astrology of Coral Scarlett Newberry, shall we? So Coral is a Taurus, and she's born right on the cusp between Taurus and Gemini, which is also called the cusp of energy. Taurus is the archetype of the artisan, and Gemini is the archetype of the messenger. So with both of these energies combined, And all of them being in the 8th house. Oh my gosh, the 8th house is the house of magic and transformation and death, regeneration, rebirth, life beyond the veil. We see with Taurus, she's able to bring her abilities of connecting to this other realm, of connecting to the darkness within ourselves, but also connecting to the sacredness and connecting to the spirit realm. And she can bring that into the physical reality through her hands, through her crafts, through her artwork. Beautiful, transforming artwork. And the Gemini portion of her sun, this is how we can see how she's a great communicator and she's able to simplify her mental processes and explain it to other people. Explain that magic, explain the unknown, the taboos, talk about all those things in a very grounded and simplified manner. Simplify to amplify would be one of her great mottos to really connect with her sun. And then her moon is in Scorpio. So again, we have, the 8th house is the house of Scorpio, where the sun is in. And then moon is in Scorpio. Again, we have that Scorpio archetype. Scorpio archetype is the transformer, the magician, the witch. And the moon is in the 1st house. And so she's very confident in her ability to show up as the witch, the transformer, as being different. She has tattoos. She is not afraid to show it to the world who she is and what she stands for. Also with the moon in the 1st house, it shows that family is very important to her. It's important to her to be seen as a mother, as a caretaker, as a nourisher. And with the moon being in Scorpio, she's a witchy mother. Then her rising sign is in Libra, conjunct Pluto. And Pluto rules Scorpio. So again, we have that Scorpio archetype there. She's such a beautiful depiction of that Scorpio archetype. Again, we have the transformer, the witch. That is part of her mask, or part of the avatar that she has chosen for this lifetime. But with Libra, it's also the artist and wanting to make things beautiful and harmonious. And it's interesting. She has this challenge to make the Plutonian topics beautiful for others. So she sees the beauty in death. She sees the beauty in regeneration, in transformation, in darkness. She sees the beauty in magic. She sees the beauty beyond the veil. And this is what she does through her work with children, with psychic abilities. Pluto is the planet of mediumship, and she is able to communicate to spirit beings and beings that aren't in this physical realm. She's very connected to her spirit guides. She has a lot of different tools and practices, which is such a beautiful depiction of her Taurus sun, having the tools, right? The physical tools or the exercises to connect more with that depth, with that magic. Her North Node is in Libra in the 12th house. And the 12th house is the house of psychic abilities. It's also the house of being of service to others and connecting with our healing energies. And also the house of art. So it is such a beautiful depiction of the way that she brings in that art and beauty of the magic, of the psychic abilities, of the things that maybe other people would see as taboo. She creates art. She creates beauty around it. And the ruler of her North Node, so the North Node stands for her soul's purpose, and the ruler of her soul's purpose is Venus. And Venus is in her 9th house in Gemini. So it shows that where she's heading on her soul's journey is towards becoming a teacher and mentor to others. It's really beautiful to see how she transformed from just being a reader to creating classes, individual classes for her clients, but also group classes and other ways of teaching people how to connect with that depth within themselves, how to connect with that magic and those psychic abilities. So to sum it all up, Coral is a witchy mother who creates art and beauty surrounding magic, transformation, and the darkness of life. She's here to mentor and coach others in connecting deeper with their psychic abilities and healing energies and spirit guides. So that is it from me. And now let's dive into the interview. And Coral is going to be guiding us through a beautiful meditation. So just sit back and relax and enjoy.
Oh, sacred sister, a kindred flame, may we light one another. From the ashes rise, oh, we rise, oh, again.
Coral, it's so special and so sacred having you here in this space right now. We honor you and really want to acknowledge your presence here. We're so grateful to be sitting with you today, and we're very excited for you to open the episode with whatever sort of message it is, meditation, whatever it is, to open up the space to begin this deeper dialogue on honoring one's intuitive gifts.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here, Britt. Should I go ahead? Is that all right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So before I do readings for people, I will always begin with some sort of a dedication or prayer to invite in their guides and to kind of create a bubble of sacred space for them and for me. And I noticed that when I do that, the reading goes so much smoother. In the beginning of doing readings, I was scared to because it was weird, but I have noticed such a difference since I've started to get brave and do that. So that's what we're going to open up the episode with, if that's all right.
Beautiful.
Perfect.
We're going to take a couple of deep breaths. Angels, archangels, ascended masters, and our guides, we ask you to be present at this time as we have this dialogue together. We ask you to be present for those who are listening as well. We ask that their guides and their angels will be with them as they listen to this podcast today, so that their hearts will be open and they will receive the messages that they need to improve their life and to connect to their own soul and their own authenticity and their own spiritual gifts. Help everybody that is listening today know that they have so many more spiritual gifts than they realize at this time, and that taking time to develop them is so worth it, and it will expand their happiness and growth so much. We ask that a sacred shield be put over us as we are speaking, that only the very highest and best of energies will be here with us as we continue on in this dialogue. And we thank you so much for all that we have in our life. Peace. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Coral. Oh my gosh, we're so excited to be open dialogue on the intuitive gifts and psychic abilities and the clairs. So we are so happy to have you here. Thank you so much for taking your time out. I know you have a busy life with 6 kids.
I do.
So thank you so much for being here. Number one thing that we always love to ask our guests is, what is your story? How did you come to learn about your psychic abilities, your intuitive gifts? Like, how did it all start for you, and what do you do in your life?
So it's such a long story. I'll try to shorten it, but my family is very psychic, very, very psychic. The Mexican side of my family. And my mother was super psychic, and it was scary as a kid because, and I think I've told you this before, Hannah, in private, that, you know, we would, as teenagers, try to trick her and say we were going to sleep at a friend's house and we were really going to some party, and she would be able to see us at the party, and we'd come home and she would say who was there and what we were wearing and the whole thing. It was
No way.
I hated it. I felt so violated. I was like, that's not fair. You know, that she can do this. This one time, I'll tell you a quick story because this I haven't really shared in public and it's hilarious. But I had my very best friend in the world. He lives in Hawaii, and he's been my best friend since I was like 14, 16, something like that. And so I was going to visit him. She let me go like over the summer to visit him for a few weeks in Hawaii. And I told her that I was staying at a girlfriend's house when actually I was staying with him. But we would sleep in the same bed, but like, you know how you put your feet opposite and then the heads opposite, so you're not actually like sleeping together? Oh my gosh. So we did that because we're just friends. I come home from Hawaii and she's like, Coral, I saw you. Like, and his feet were this way and your head was that way. And I was like, I don't know what you mean, but I died. So it was hard growing up that way. And we were what I kind of got the idea of was that she was so psychic and gifted, not because it was hereditary. It was because she was really strong in her religion. That was the message that I got as a kid. Mom is a really good member of her church, and that is why God has gifted her these amazing powers. And so I always felt growing up that, oh, I must not have these amazing powers because I'm not good enough. God's not happy with me, so he's not letting me have these things, you know. My grandmother was that way too, and we have great grandmother and so on and so forth also. But that was really the belief I grew up with. But it was really great growing up in a family where those things were talked about so openly. I remember waking up, you know, having breakfast around the table in the morning, and we would all immediately say, what did you dream? And all of us all the kids and my parents would talk about what they dreamed, not just for fun, but because we knew that strong messages came through from dreaming. And a lot of those times, those dreams would come true later. And that's why we'd ask, so we could see what's going to happen. Is this a real thing? And I realized later growing up is that, you know, Native Americans did that too, where they would have these dream circles and they would get messages in the morning after people had dreamed and say, what message did you receive in the nighttime? And so that was kind of the environment I grew up in. So growing up that way, it really opened my mind to all those things, but I didn't think that I had anything special that I could control anyway. I would have dreams sometimes and they would come true, but a lot of people do. I think that's really common. So anyway, as I got older, what happened was it was around 29 years old. Isn't that what's it called? Something returns.
Saturn return.
The Saturn returns thing. I didn't know that that's what was happening, but it was like between 28 and 30. I started meditating around that time, and I learned how to meditate from Yogananda's work, Paramahansa Yogananda. And so I started meditating. I was meditating a lot, like a couple hours a day. And that's when I started to see like these visions pop up in my mind. And the first time that it happened that I realized I was seeing things that were real was I was meditating, and all of a sudden I saw this vision of my sister, Crystal, and she was crying. And she was wearing this really like thin white t-shirt, and her hair was all messy. She had no makeup on, and it was Sunday morning. And I know that she should have been getting ready for church at that time. And it was such a strong vision. I jumped out of my meditation and I went and called her. And sure enough, she had been crying over some big fight that she'd had with her husband. And it was Sunday morning. She should have been getting ready for church. But, you know, she wasn't. And the thin little white t-shirt that she was wearing, she's Mormon, and Mormons have these special clothing undergarments they wear that are called garments. They're very thin and white. And that's what I had been seeing. And I remember being so freaked out. Like I couldn't believe that I had seen this thing that was happening from miles and miles away. And I remember at the grocery store pushing my little shopping cart that day, like in a daze, like what happened? How did that happen? You know, and it continued to happen but just sporadically. I couldn't control it. Once in a while, I'd have some crazy vision. It would be a real thing. The kids, for example, lost the dog at one point. Our dog ran away. And I was able to see in my mind which house the dog had gone to and have them knock on the door and get the dog. But I couldn't control it, though. So what ended up happening was I was working at Buffalo Exchange, where I met my husband there. And there's this guy that came to Buffalo Exchange. And during that time I was dating, I'm sorry, I know this is a crazy long story, but it's a good one though.
Yeah, it is.
I was dating this guy. Okay. And this guy was like, he was not a good dude. He was very unhealthy. He was into drugs, but he was an amazing artist. So I was really impressed with him. And I was like, I know I shouldn't be dating this dude, but he was coming to Vegas and I was starting to get scared because I was like, this guy, like, he's really deeply enmeshed in like drug culture. And I was scared, and I was at work and I was like shaking and freaking out and asking my guides, like, can you guys give me some sort of a message that I'm going to be safe or whatever? And this guy was a puppeteer. He lived on the streets and he made puppets out of trash that he would find in the dumpster. So anyway, this other dude comes in to the store and he's talking to me and I'm kind of ignoring him. Okay, here's your clothes, take a room, whatever, because I'm distracted. And finally, I kind of chit chat with him and I say, well, what do you do? He's like, I'm an entertainer. I was like, well, what kind of entertainer? He says, I'm a puppeteer. And I about flipped. And then he goes, I'm a psychic puppeteer, where he takes little puppets and like, he'll be like, with little kids mostly, you should be an author when you're older, like to help them connect to their futures and whatever. Aww. So I flipped out. I was like, a puppeteer. I've only met two. And the other one was this guy I was dating. So during that time, like all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, you are, this is crazy. And we just bonded like fast. And so I ended up working with him, and he was my first teacher, where he actually was able to teach me about the visions, and he made me do readings on him to practice. I really didn't want to do. And, he had all these health issues and he was asking me what he should do about them. And I was able to start seeing things popping into my mind. And then he started having other people call me to do readings on them, which was terrifying. But that was really how I got started with actually doing readings. And that was, I feel like I needed a teacher to really learn how to control it. And also to not think I was losing my mind, that I wasn't crazy. It was like real,
Yeah.
So that's how I got started. That's the beginnings.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel like it's so interesting, because I think this is happening for a lot of people when we start getting in contact with those spiritual gifts that we all have in some capacity. We, especially in the society, we tend to think that we may go crazy, Yeah. And I mean, if you would have told this to a normal doctor, there are chances that you would have gotten some prescriptions for some drugs that are going to help you to not have these visions and to like literally shut it down. I had a few of my clients that have been through that, and they said they've seen visions and they've seen all of that, and then the doctor put them on medication because he said it's not real, it's not there. So
yeah, same with my dad. My dad was having really strong visions after my grandfather passed away in a really traumatic way. And then it was right when my mom was getting sick too, and he had this same vision every single night of this coffin falling off the bed and my grandfather walking across the room into like this awning of fire, and he didn't know what to make of it. So he went and told his counselor about it, got sent to a doctor and got put on an antipsychotic. And not only did it stop the visions, but it stopped a lot of his dreaming period for a long time.
Right. Yeah.
But it's like such an interesting thing, because for people that are not necessarily tapped into like this world of finding deeper meaning in things that are circulating in their lives, it's like, how do you even conceptualize that this could, like, how do you even open the door for people that are just like kind of functioning in the matrix still?
Yeah. I got sidetracked with, and I have to tell you this really quick because I feel like it's important, but where you were talking about, shutting those visions down with the medication. And, I do believe that sometimes people need medication for certain things and all that kind of thing. I take it from time to time. There was a time when I was taking so much medication that I had been prescribed, and especially sleep medication. And I was very addicted to the sleep medication. It was Ambien. I mean, it was such a crazy addiction. I don't know how I ever got off, but I remember the thing that motivated me to get off of it was because I knew that with my children, I could not tap into what I needed to see psychically for them. I couldn't dream the things that needed to come through for them if I was on that medication. And it was so hard to get off. But I remember I was like, I know for me when I was growing up, I could always go to my mom and I could say, Mom, how do you feel about this? Have you had any feelings? Have you had any dreams? And I was like, if I cannot do that for my kids, then I am doing a huge disservice to them. And that was a big motivating factor to get off the medication I was on. Wow. So, okay. So now what was the other question? I got sidetracked.
It's beautiful. I love that you just mentioned that. And it's almost like taking a responsibility of like developing our own gifts. And, it's so easy to dismiss them. It's so easy to think, oh, who cares about that? I love that you grow up in a family where you were asked, what did you dream last night? Like, oh my gosh, like that would have been my dream as a kid. Like I grew up in a family where it was like, dreams don't matter. We don't want to hear your dreams. That's your thing. That's your fantasy that your brain just made up. We don't care. And I always wanted to share my dreams. It's like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I had these amazing dreams. And I was, lucid dreaming and astral traveling already as a kid. And I shut it down throughout my teenager times too, and just, came into it by the end of 20s again, came back into it. Right. But it was the same thing. Like my parents were like, it was just not a thing in their lives. So they didn't see the importance of it and why, how it can help others, not just ourselves, but also, your kids, also your friends, your family,
Yeah. Yeah. It was so funny. My daughter just this morning, she comes to me and she's like, Mom, I can't believe this thing happened. And I always say that to them. I'm like, the coolest thing happened. But she had her own story today, and she's 15, and she says that the night before last, she dreamed that her science teacher, I think it was, got in a car accident. And then she went to school and he had some kind of sling on his shoulder and he had gotten into a car accident. So cool that she is starting to have, her own proof that these things are real things, and so that was huge. And that was just today.
That was today.
That was just this morning.
So yesterday I was going through this intersection, and I actually, this happens to me quite common when I'm passing an intersection. I envision or I imagine or I think, oh my gosh, what if someone came from the side and T-boned me? But yesterday I actually slowed down at an intersection because I felt it more strongly. And then the next time that I talked to Hannah, she goes, we just got into an accident and someone hit us from the side.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but it's all good. We were all slow, so
yeah. No, I wasn't envisioning something super crashy happening. Right. But I love that you just mentioned that, and I really want to touch on something that you said earlier. I feel like I had a little light bulb moment whenever you were talking about your lineage, and I think this is a really great piece for any listeners that maybe haven't started putting thought or conceptualizing ideas like this, because I never really knew what ancestral trauma or generational trauma, or even conceptualizing how to look at my ancestral lineage, from generations past. And I love that you mentioned that you have had this ability within your lineage and within your bloodline. That's really beautiful, I think, to lay voice to, because all of us have these ancestors. We all have, things that have been passed down in our bloodline, and it's always up to us to get curious, to investigate what has gone on in our family as far as the good and the bad.
Yeah.
And really looking at the way that it's passed down to us, the way that it's reflecting in our lives, the way that we're operating in that way, or denying to operate in that way. And then always allowing yourself this space that says, because it's my family's does not make it mine as far as trauma goes, or, wanting to reach out and hold something that maybe you haven't learned to live into in this life, but that you want to embody or that you want to get curious about. I just love to share a teeny tiny story about my grandmother, my mom's mom, my grandma Tita. And I need to talk to my grandma Tita and see if this is like even her mom and her mom's mom. But my grandma was really, really psychic, and she used to know when people were going to get in car accidents, and my grandfather would too. So there were some times that, my grandfather would come home late at night and my grandma would be like, you have to go back out. So-and-so is getting in a car accident or something like that. And it would come true and it would freak her out. So, so she asked God to actually remove this from her because she was so scared. And I think she had already I don't think she had become a Christian yet, but that was the role that my mom played in my family's life, is that she was a born again Christian and would even like make my dad stop on the side of the road to pick up homeless people so that she could witness to them.
Oh, wow. Whoa.
Yeah. She was that person, but she was the big witness in her family, and God had my Auntie Nat, her sister, transition to Christian, and my grandmother too. So I think that was a part of the shutting down of that process too.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. It's funny. My mother, she kind of did the same thing because we were pretty crazy, me and my brothers and sisters. One of them was not. She's like a saint. Just fell from heaven, this girl. She does all the right things. But me and my other brothers and sisters were just nuts. And so my mom, she would see all the crazy things that we were doing in her, visions, and she didn't want to see them anymore. She didn't want to worry about them anymore. So she asked God or the universe, she asked, if there's nothing I can do about what my kids are doing, don't let me see it. Don't let me know about it. And things got easier for me after that. But, it was nice because I had autonomy after that. I had autonomy. I didn't have somebody like psychically spying on me all the time, which was really nice. And I wish that I'd had these tools, you guys, when I was young, because there are ways to make it so that people cannot psychically spy on you. You can create like this energy barrier around yourself. There's things you can do. And I of course, I didn't know as a kid, but my grandmother was like that too, Britt. And this is such a funny story, but my family's from Mexico. I think yours is too. Yours is too, right, Brittany?
Yes, lineage from Spain, but they came over to Mexico, which is now New Mexico after the border was created.
Okay. Yeah, us too, Spain and to Mexico. But my grandmother was very psychic and would know when people were going to die and all the kind of thing. And it's such a funny story. There was this story about my grandfather. He wasn't quite as philanthropic as the females in my family. And so they had a lot of cows. Well, they had a couple of cows in Mexico. And that's a big thing. So that's a lot of money. Like they're rich because they had a couple cows where they lived. And one day, some lady wanted milk from the cows. Some poor lady said, could I have milk from the cows? And my grandfather said no. And my grandmother told him, because you didn't get milk for that lady, you didn't share our milk, that cow is going to be dead in the morning. And it was dead in the morning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it was like that, like the whole way through growing up. This is a horrible story, but my little cousin died when he was 3, and he was run over by his dad, backed over by his dad in the car where his dad didn't know he was behind him. And when my aunt went to go tell my grandmother what happened, she said, Mom, and she started to tell her, and my grandmother said, oh no, she goes, the baby got run over by the car. Like she saw it and she said it out loud, and nobody ever told her what happened. Like she saw it and she knew it immediately. So that kind of thing. And, I think it's important also to know that these things run in your family. For me, what was important was to know that it's not anything to do with being a good person. That's a big aha moment that I had to have with myself, where people think that if you're psychic or you have these special gifts, that it's because you're a good person. But there's some shitty people out there who have these gifts too, and they use them for crappy things. And I always kind of equate it to Beethoven, where he was an asshole. Like, he's a bad dude. He was not nice. But then you listen to his music, and he clearly had the ability to connect with God, to connect with his higher self in the universe, and to channel. But he was not necessarily a nice guy. And so when you can see things as hereditary, you can see them as special gifts that have just come to you, you know, for whatever reason, and not equate it with religion, not equate it with being a good person. I feel like that really frees you up to, you know, to know that you have them too. And you don't have to do anything special to earn them, you know?
Yes. And I also feel like I feel like that so many more people have special gifts and spiritual gifts, just as we all have. You know, we're able to hear and see and feel and touch, most of us, and taste. And so we can have those as clairvoyance and clairaudience and clairsentience in a small capacity, you know, until we start more developing them and more like diving into them. And I think this is what I feel very passionate about, allowing people to understand that it's so much more. Like, even if you don't know that your mom was psychic, there is a big chance that you are. You know what I mean? Like, even my mom, for example, has such an intuitive gift. Like, she knew, for example, that my grandma was going to cross over. And so she woke up in the middle of the night, and she went over to my grandma's and to her mom and held her hand and guided her to cross over. Right. Like she knew. And she told my dad about it. And my dad was just like, well, that was just random. You know, that was, you just woke up in the morning and probably needed to pee anyway. And, you know, just like really making it super casual. Yeah. Rationalizing it. And so my mom was never at that place where she really embraced her intuitive gifts. Like, if you asked her if she was psychic, she was like, no way. Yeah. But there were so many incidences where my mom knows. She just like, she has this claircognizance. Like, she just knows what's going on. Like, she knows when I'm not happy. She knows when I'm sad. Like, she knows, you know, when something's going on with someone, and, you know, she knew that her mom is going to cross over. But since she was never validated in it, it was never something that she owned. She didn't own her spiritual gifts. Yeah.
I'm really curious. I know that we've spoken on a few of the clairs, but I would love to just add some structure and talk about each of the clairs, and maybe we can go through the list and then focus on each one and like share some stories, share some, you know, insights. Yeah. So let's go through. So there are 6 that we have listed here. I feel like when I was first learning about clairs, I heard of the 5. But, you know, I feel like as time goes on, more are sort of being understood of how we can perceive more and more and more abilities. So we have clairvoyance, which is clear seeing. Clairaudience, which is clear hearing. Right. Clairsentience, which is clear feeling. Clairalience, which I don't know that I had heard of, which is clear smelling. That's dope.
Okay. I was talking to my husband about this the other day, and I was like, I know there's one for smelling, and I can't remember the name. Okay.
There you go. Clairalience. Now you know. Weird. Aliens. Okay.
Isn't that cool? That's called aliens.
How funny. Yeah. Clairgustance, which is clear tasting. And claircognizance, which is the clear knowing.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. You know, the ones that I work with the most are clairvoyance and clairsentience. And I actually had read a book by Doreen Virtue a while back, and it was one of the funnest books that I read on psychic work. I know she's kind of like out of the loop these days. That's okay. But it was so fun because she actually had exercises in it where, and I want to make a book for the kids, and I actually do play these games with the kids now, but I want to have something more formal to do with them. But so in the book, it would say, okay, now we're going to test your ability for clairvoyance. And it would say on page 60, what is the answer to the question on page 60? That's all it would say. And I was like, I can't freaking do that, because it could be any question. And so there was maybe 5 questions like that for clairvoyance. And I just was like, whatever, who cares? It's just me and myself here. I'll just try it. So I closed my eyes and it was like, what is the drawing on page 72? What is the shape that's whatever? And so I went and wrote them all. And I got all but one right. The question, I remember specifically the question on page whatever was 2 + 2. And I had written down math question and then I wrote 4. And that was the answer to that question. And I about flipped my crap. I mean, I knew I was already doing psychic work, but something as specific as that was so crazy. But then what got crazy was then there was a whole section for just clairaudience. And it said, which is clear hearing for those of you who are new to this. And it said, okay, you have to shut down your visual, aspects of things. You cannot be using your visual psychic, whatever. Sorry, clairsentient. What is the word? Clear seeing. You can't do that. Mm-hmm. You have to just use your hearing. And I didn't get any right. I could not pick up any of it because I'm not good with that. I'm not good with clairaudience at all. And so that was a testament to me that there are just some people that if I try to say, okay, we're going to do psychic work, I'm going to play psychic games with you, we're going to do like a class, and everybody is going to try to picture what I just drew on this piece of paper. There are some people that won't be able to do it, and they'll walk away thinking that they don't have any psychic gifts when that is so not true. Like everybody has some psychic gift. Mm-hmm. They're different from other people's, but they have them. Yeah. So that was really interesting. Yeah, I would like to strengthen the ones that I'm weak in, if that's possible.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Do you know the name of the book? Remember?
I don't remember what it was. I think it might have been The Lightworker's Way, but I don't think so. But I can send it to you and you can put it in the notes. It was one of her older books. And I've recommended it to a few friends. And I a lot of the psychic games I play with my kids, I got from that book.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, we're going to touch more on the psychic games later on too.
Oh, they're so fun.
Yeah, so fun. So I just want to add I just read actually yesterday a little exercise by Rebecca Rosen. She's a psychic medium. Mm-hmm. To kind of find out what is your strength in each of these clairs.
Right.
And she said, okay, so the way you can do it is you just take a moment and look around in your room and just really take in everything that you can. Mm-hmm. and dive into the feeling of it, like really take in everything. And then close your eyes. And now feel into what is it that you mostly remember of this room. Mm-hmm. Is it the things that you saw? Is it the smell? The taste, the things that you heard, the feeling that the room provoked in you. Right. Is it the inner knowing that may have come up, like some ideas? And this is how you can figure out, okay, what am I naturally more tuned into? So what sense am I naturally more picking up? And I did that as a little test for myself. And I realized it was, for me, clairvoyance, clairaudience, and claircognizance. Those are like my 3. Whereas my clairvoyance is not as empowered as yours, just like as your mom's and like seeing all this stuff. But it's more like with like receiving visions and the lucid dreamings and stuff. Yeah. But it's so fascinating because we can tune into, okay, what is it that we naturally feel? Is it that we like tune more into the hearing or the feeling or the smelling and the tasting side of things, Yeah.
Yeah. It can be frustrating, I'll tell you, because with my 6 kids, because I pick up things very differently than they do. The way that it feels is that they're almost in a little bubble, where they're in this little bubble and they see things in a different way than I do. So they can be experiencing something psychic that no one else can see or no one else can feel. And also I can't.
because that the gifts that some of them have are not the same as me. So that's been something I've been experiencing just recently with the kids, which can be really hard for me because I'm like, this is the work I do this. And then they're experiencing something I'm not aware of. And it can be hard, but that's why we have to do this work together. That's why we're not, on some desert island by ourselves doing this, because the gifts that one of us have, another might not. And when we rely on each other and we create this network, this little ecosystem where we use all those gifts together, we can become so much more powerful. And then we have all the gifts. We have all of them.
Yes.
Not just within ourselves.
Do you know that little story in the Bible? I wanna quote it. Maybe put it in the caption or something. But it's this little story about how it's not about being jealous of other people's gifts, but about owning your own gift. And the hand is not jealous of the foot. The eye is not jealous of the nose. Remember that little thing?
Yeah.
And it's like, by all of them coming together, we're part of this big body, and the body needs all of us. Otherwise, it's not, this is the teamwork, and we all have our special gifts. And when we come together, we can make it a whole.
Yeah. That movie, The Dark Crystal, I've only seen it once and I don't remember like any of it, but there was this one scene where the main character, the girl and the boy, they're like best friends or lovers or something, and they're holding hands, and all of a sudden they can see into each other's like energetic space. They can see each other's past. They can see each other's future, and they tell each other, this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing you do this. I'm seeing you do that. And then the other person is doing the same thing back. And that's how I feel like that is our true nature. That's how we are supposed to be interacting with one another. We're supposed to be able to do those things.
Yeah. I mean, imagine the justice system. If there were more psychically empowered beings in the court and in the justice system, there wouldn't be such a thing as like getting away with murder and, doing these things, because you would touch the person and be like, I see you, you did this. And then the other person like, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know what has been blowing my mind lately? I'll tell you something that's kind of blowing my mind. I know we're talking about the clairs. We should go back to them maybe. But I've been talking to a few psychic debunkers lately, like people who debunk psychics for a living. Yeah. And I don't mind. And it's kind of neat. It's kind of like the checks and balances of the psychic community. And I think that's great. But what shocks me about people like that is that to be a psychic debunker or somebody who's very, very skeptical, it has to mean in my mind that they haven't had these experiences, that they've never had a dream that they dreamed and then it came true, that they've never just known something and then it happened. That blows my mind that there might be people out there who haven't experienced that.
Right. Yeah. Like they're more committed to being cynical of someone else's experience than being open to the possibility that maybe it's just something they haven't experienced yet.
What do you guys think? I do want to kind of understand this better. Why do you think that maybe some people are just kind of, that they don't have the experiences, that they don't have them?
You know what?
Think that they're maybe cutting themselves off?
I think some of them cut themselves off, and I wonder if other ones are just don't have that sixth sense. Because there are people that are blind, there are people that are deaf.
That's how I felt too. Yeah, that it has to be kind of like, exactly. That some people are born with the color blindness or whatever, and maybe that is the universe just making us have different variations of humanity to make things more interesting. Because I just don't believe that they're being cut off to make themselves miserable and confused, And
I feel like it plays into the duality of life too. As soon as we have on one side people that believe in it, in psychic abilities and own it, there has to be on the other side people that don't own it and don't believe in it. It's like, it's this game that we play here on Earth. It's everything is like the yin and yang and the duality and polarity, and we're like triggering each other and learning from each other.
I agree.
So I would love to go back to something that you said a couple minutes ago, Coral, about coming together and about really having that community, having that sisterhood. I really love that Hannah and I host this podcast together because I feel like we're such beautiful reflections of one another and the duality that we can experience as sisters, because this is so normal for Hannah, like that she's developed within herself. She's just really embodied it and accepted it. And, you know, I'm stepping into that place more now, but I want to speak to all the listeners that might feel like this is so far outside of themselves and so far outside of their realm of conception, or, you know, even just thinking that something like this is possible, because those are where the judgments come from that are like, you know, very skeptical or cynical, or where we can just lay harsh judgments on other people because we haven't experienced this stuff ourselves. So Sage comes over and I just hand her my grandfather's hat, the hat that he was wearing on his head every day. I come from like a very small town, rural area in New Mexico, where like the majority of my family on both sides are kind of like cowboys. And, you know, everyone has pigs and goats and sheep and horses and all the animals. So she holds the hat, the sombrero, and is like feeling around on the inside of the brim of the hat, and immediately just goes like, oh my gosh, this just feels hot. This just feels so like fire. And I don't even know what I'm picking up right now. And, you know, the stature of this person is just so strong, and just keeps mentioning hotness and heat and fire. And, like the strength that was inside of my grandfather's energy. And at the end of the reading, I was just absolutely beside myself, because my grandfather did pass in a fire accident where he fell into a fire pit in my parents' backyard at a matanza, a party that was being had for me. Isn't that insane? I don't know if I've shared this. I think I maybe have shared a little bit of the story in season 1 of the podcast, but it's like, it's just so powerful to it can be so life-changing to really feel into our capabilities. And she doesn't even do this like professionally. She was just feeling into something that she intuitively felt like she might have a gift inside.
Right.
I just wonder if any of you can really kind of speak to this. Or
I love that you're touching on that. the clear touching that we didn't mention in our list before, the clairtangent. I mean, I personally haven't had an experience with clairtangent, so I can't say that I have that gift at this point in my life. But at the same time, I feel like we can be so, feeling into and tuning into what is already there. And then the more that we allow ourselves to develop that, the other ones start, or there is a chance that the other ones start to come in more. Like for me, for example, I started out with my very first, well, I guess my clairvoyance, if you want to look into like visions and stuff that I had as a kid, but my very first, when I was like more older, the clair that came in was clair aliens. So that was when my grandma crossed over, and we saw her laying in bed, and everybody was around her crying, and I was like, she's not there anymore. That's just an empty vessel. She's not here. And so I left the room and I went to the living room where she always loves to be in. And I sit down on the chair, on the couch that she so loved. And suddenly I feel this wind, and I started smelling her perfume. It's like very distinct perfume. And I just I got goosebumps all over me, and I just knew, wow, hi, here you are. And it was just so beautiful. And since then, slowly I started to just learn more about death and the crossing over and where we actually are, like on the other
side of the veil, basically, and that we're never really die. But that was like my initiation. It was actually through the Claire aliens. And since then, I've met a lot of people that have been saying like, yeah, I sometimes like smell this, or I smell roses, or I smell a perfume from my mom, and, you know, just like different things. And I don't think a lot of people are aware that that's Claire aliens.
Yeah. You know, a little exercise. I'm all about exercises, as you know. Like anytime I teach a class, it's just filled with really practical advice and exercises, because I want people to be able to go home and do stuff, not just be entertained, you know? So one thing that I have told, I can't remember which client, but I came up with this where they were trying to strengthen their psychic abilities. And what I told them to do to start reading people's energy is this. And I have done this too, and it's really, really magical. So do you know how, I don't know if you have stairs in your house. You do, Hannah. Britt, you don't. But sometimes you can hear someone coming down the hallway or down the stairs. You don't know who it is, but you can feel who it is. They almost have their footsteps, almost have like a DNA to them. And so just starting to practice of guessing, okay, I can feel someone coming, who is it, is the same technique and kind of the same way that you start to read people's energy. And a really good exercise to do is to get a piece of paper and write down, like maybe your children or your husband or your best friend, write down like 4 or 5 different people. And just sit there with each person and pretend that they're behind you, or that they're coming down the stairs where you don't see them, but you feel their energy, and write down everything that you feel about them. And you will learn so much about those people from doing that, things that you did not know. Like it is astounding how much you can pick up just from just setting the intention to tap into their energy.
Yes.
Thank you for that. That's a beautiful exercise.
Yeah,
that's a fun action guide for our audience too. The clairsentience of the feeling of the energies. It's interesting too, because when I started doing tarot readings for people other than my friends, and I started actually going into, you know, the public and start giving readings. And Brittany actually just recently had her very first official tarot reading.
Tarot?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean being hired?
Yes.
That's so yeah. For Halloween, it was so much fun.
Oh, that's so rad. Congrats.
Thank you.
That actually started for me where I really tapped into clairsentience more. Because at first, when I started off with tarot, I had a book, and I was very much by the book, and I was learning all about it, what it means in a book. And then I started to like learn more about, okay, let me feel into this energy. Let me feel like what is really going on. What is the story behind it? And what can I pick up from the energy of the person that I'm reading, and bring that into the cards with me. And so I feel like these little tools, if that's tarot, if that's pendulum, if that's, you know, different crystals, those can all help us feel more into that clairsentience as well, or feel more into the clairs, and start knowing something that is maybe not presented literally in front of us, but that we just feel within us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking that today. I was thinking how I really want to learn how to, you know, read the melted wax and candles and tea leaves, because all of that is the same. It's all the same. You know, it's just giving your conscious mind something to chew on and mess with, so that you can so that your unconscious mind and your higher self can get the actual message. And so you can do it with clouds, or, you know, throwing bones or whatever.
Yes. I have a friend
like to learn those.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine. Her name is Chelsea, and she was actually my initiator. She helped me. She initiated me. Initiator. Thank you. She helped me to really tune into my psychic abilities. And she was the very first friend that I had when I moved to Las Vegas. I met her at I want to say a magician show. Yeah. And and we were both hired as models in this magician show. And so that's how I met her. And I just was so inspired by her because she does tarot, tea leaf readings, lipstick readings, handwriting analysis, and like all these different things. And I'm just like, how do you know all of this? Like, how do you do it? And she's like, I'm just, it's the same thing. You just got to tune into the energies, whatever you pick up. And like, she does crystal ball readings and like all these things where now I actually almost had a gig as a tea leaf reader, but then it didn't end up happening. But I was like opening myself up to it. I was like, you know what? If that's what wants to come into my life, like I'm open to practice. And I just love how she saw it as so normal. And that's always helps me when I meet someone for who is just like completely normal. Because then I can take that on and be like, oh yeah, it is normal. And as soon as I say that to myself, that that's normal, I actually open myself up to experience that as well.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I really love about my mentor, Letty Snyder, which I always give her a shout out because she has taught me so freaking much. But you meet her and she looks like a normal human being. She's not like, covered in crystals with a little crown and all sorts of sacred geometry all over her body and like little robes. I mean, she just looks normal. And she takes her little shot of tequila once a day. And I love that because it really normalizes this. It's like, you don't have to go out and cover your body with all kinds of, spiritual artwork like me or whatever. You don't have to eat a certain way to make it happen. And you can just be yourself and just be have a lot of self-awareness. I feel like psychic work is self-awareness. Like that is the main thing that it is. And, I used to do a lot of tarot card readings. Like that's how I started at 14. I like secretly bought I was raised Mormon and, secretly bought my little pack of tarot cards and studied them and learned how to read cards really well. But once I started to really get to know myself and become very authentic in myself, that's when my psychic gifts really were strengthened. And now I use tarot cards almost never. I'm telling you, like, out of 10 readings I do, maybe I'll use the cards for one little question that I want a little bit more clarity on. I think you, Hannah, also are getting more kind of doing things intuitively and less with tools. Yes. And I always want to stress to people that as fun as tools are, it can be super fun to have, little bells and singing bowls and all the things. But I do feel like the universe, I don't want to say God because that might trigger people, but, the universe, our creator, did not make it essential for us to go to the store and buy anything to be able to do psychic work. We should not ever feel like we have to have special oils or a special crystal. Our body, our intention, our soul, that is all we need to do powerful psychic work.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you for touching on that. I think it's really important. It can create that whole divide that people have over just like different aspects of lack mindset too. Yeah. Like, oh, I would be able to, but if only I had this, and it just puts the power outside of themselves. But yeah, I love that both of you just touched on that right now too. I'm someone who sees massive importance in tools just for myself, as far as like, it feels like almost a gasoline stop that I go and re-up myself by tapping into these, pieces of magic that, awakens something inside of me or fill me up in some way. But that's just where I'm at right now. And I think that it's really important to also mention that it's a spectrum that, maybe in the beginning, it's like everyone is so individual that maybe in the beginning, this isn't going to be your story. Maybe seasons later, you're going to resonate with using tools as a fill-up station more, or maybe, it's like everyone is so individual. And that's why I think setting the comparison game aside for things that are as etheric as this is really, really helpful too. And just putting everybody else's experiences totally to the side whenever you're trying to unfold and uncover what it is that your unique path is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Letty, my mentor, I remember when I first met her, I met her through a friend who is ridiculously gifted also, but she doesn't do it as a job. And she was working with Letty, and I was the newbie. I was like the kind of the third wheel at first. And so we'd all hang out, and Letty and my friend were just talking about all this amazing psychic work they're doing. And I remember just sitting there kind of jealous, and really trying to pick up on, can I read their minds right now? Maybe I can share something that's just going to blow them away. I wanted so bad to be like at their level or whatever. And I remember Letty telling me a few weeks later, she didn't know that. I never said out loud, but she was like, Coralita, she always called me Coralita. You need to stop trying to grasp this fruit that is not in your reach yet. You need to let it happen naturally, because you're cutting yourself off from your own process by doing that. And I remember being ashamed that she knew. But truly it was within a year after that point that I started getting much stronger in my psychic abilities.
What a humbling process too, huh?
Yeah, you need that. And you need people who are stronger than you in certain areas. You need that. Otherwise you don't grow. There's that quote that says, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. I love that quote. And that's why I really do try to find, women like you to surround myself with, people who are doing maybe more than me in certain areas so that I can grow. I know that I do these sweat lodges. I told you, Britt, about the sweat lodges. And it's a little intimidating because I have this Lakota medicine woman who is powerful as can be. And then this amazing medium who, I've never met a medium that was as legit as she is. All these women who are just so gifted. And then I always feel like I'm the kind of not quite at their level. They're older than me. They've been doing this for so long. And I've been doing it for, a while, but not 20 years. But I'm always so grateful to be included, because I know that just by being around those type of people, not even them teaching me formally, but just by being in the presence of those kinds of people, my spiritual gifts are growing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's why I love going to this Conscious Life Expo that Britt and I just recently went last weekend, because that's the same thing. We see people on stage doing their thing, being so grounded in who they are and just owning their gifts, and even just being around them. And we're going to have some of them on this podcast. We're so excited. But even just being around them is already activating so many things in both of us. It's just
I sent Hannah a 25-minute audio message last night. Do you just feel like life is different now? Things are happening.
Wow, I need to go to that. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. Yes. You know what I was going to say too, Coral? Because both of us are Taurus Gemini cusp, huh? Because your birthday is 2 days before mine. So when you were 2 days before, right?
Yours is the 28th or the 18th?
No,
18th?
Yours is the 20th, right?
Yes.
The day before mine. I'm the 21st.
Oh, okay.
So what you were just speaking, I just want to, expand on a little bit, because I feel like it's such a Gemini trait that we are so curious that we really love being in that sort of platform where we're learning from people around ourselves all the time. And I know for myself, when I feel myself hanging out with groups of people and I realize that I'm not learning anything from them, I just it can almost be a struggle not to become resentful, because I'm nope, I need more stimulation. I need more activation. That's, this is just my path, because I'm endlessly devoted to self-study work and learning how to grow myself. But these are the pieces of inspiration that we can align ourselves with when we know what it is that we're trying to head towards. And we can start looking at our friend groups and saying okay, do these people make me feel good? Do they talk to me in a loving way? Are they encouraging of me to be my best self? Are they, or do you not get a lot of those things? And that's when we start to ask ourselves, like, what is it that I really want out of this life? And am I going to move towards that here? And this is the way that the spiritual path starts to change your life, because the choice is always in your hands of whether you stay in that situation or if you decide to do the scary thing, because your life will change whenever you start moving in a different way in life. And sometimes I think that people just like haven't experienced that yet. And they haven't really been able to feel into the potency that's inside of like actually making different choices in your life and how that will lead to a different reality for yourself over time.
So funny. I am exactly that way, Britt. Exactly. And I feel kind of bad because I feel like, am I using people? Like I always have to ask myself that, because I only want to be around friends that can teach me something. And so if I meet somebody that I know is really an amazing presenter or performer or writer, immediately I want to be around that person because I know they can teach me something. And I don't mean to be like a user, and it's not really that. It's that I respect them and I see myself in them. I see a seed of what I want to become in the people that I'm surrounding myself with. And it's more of honoring them. But at the same time, I do not hang around with people just because they make me feel good. I don't.
So I want to touch on that real quick too, because I'm just like, my astrology brain is just like, you have to mention this. So in the 11th house rules our friends and the people that we connect ourselves with, but it also rules our future. So this is where it's like so potent, because like literally the people, how they always say the 5 people that you surround yourself with are the ones that you become. So, becoming aware of, and especially, we're talking about here psychic abilities, surrounding yourself with people who already have developed some of these abilities or own them or, embody them in some ways is going to naturally take you on that path. You don't even have to study formally with them, but even just being surrounded by them is helping you already moving towards that future self of yours. And I love how you said that you see yourself in them because they are a version of your future self. And that's ultimately like the people, our community and our friends that we ultimately are called to connect with. And even, just in astrology, like in the 11th house, friends and future self are in the same house. It's the same thing. It's the same kind of energy. So I love that we touched on this, because for people that are listening to this and you're like, I don't know, it's not in my reality at all that I would be able to have any psychic abilities. Seek out people that do. Seek out people who listen to a psychic medium, or seek out people that are already owning it, just like being here on the Sacred Sister podcast,
And even just to add on to what you just said, because I love it so much, especially if you listen to the other people and they trigger you and you have like this, any sort of like negative association with the stories they're telling or the techniques they're using, the practices they're mentioning. If those trigger you, those are the deepest teachers, the most potent teachers for you, because they have a lot to teach you because you don't see things the same way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good. I love it.
This is such a fun conversation. So I was curious if we can keep some little story sections truncated. So it's like we've talked about the clairtangents. We've talked a little bit about clairvoyance. Hannah, you touched on the clairalience, and I wanted to share the little story that my little candle that's right here, that my little circle card is on from the archetype Kim Kranz deck, is the candle that Hannah got me for Christmas when my mom first entered treatment. I just haven't thought about a lot of this in a long time, so I'm being very activated in this conversation.
Good.
So this little candle here, Hannah gave me to pray over my mom, and I said that I was going to bring it into my mom's room and, just, really spend time with it when I was with my mom. And right after I think Hannah gave me this is when my mom went downhill really rapidly. So I went out there and I wasn't able to light this and spend that kind of time with her because there were people in the room nearly all the time because she was having to constantly be monitored. But when I came home after she had passed away and I hadn't lit it yet, I woke up, I think 4 days after she passed, and I had a convention that I was working. I know probably a lot of people are like, you worked 4 days after your mom passed away? And yes, I did, because, I think that transition was easier for me to understand because I saw it coming from a long way away. And I knew that she was with me directly after she passed away. So I had never had a clairvoyant feeling before, but I was laying in bed and I remember opening my eyes right after I woke up and thinking about my mom and saying, okay, Mom, you're going to come with me to the convention today. And my nose flooded with the smell of this candle. And I didn't even know what it was. I was just in bed and I breathed it in and I was like, what is that smell? And 3 deep breaths I took. And I was like, what even is that? I haven't lit anything. I hadn't even lit this yet. I didn't even know what it smelled like, but I looked over at my altar. It was on the far side of my altar. And I went and picked it up and smelled it. And I just started bawling because I had never experienced anything like that before. It's just insane. It's like, these are the things I feel like that you don't even know how it will feel when it starts getting activated inside of you, but it gives you an entirely different way of perceiving the world.
Yeah. Those are the little ways of like how spirit can communicate with us. It's almost like she took that smell and put it into your nose, helping you smell that so that, like, I want to connect with you on this deeper level. I'm here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so beautiful.
So thank you for getting me that candle, Hannah. It's like this kind of symbiotic relationship that you can have in friendships too, where you're activating them in certain ways that they wouldn't be activated, by you in the same way. And they're doing the exact same thing to you. If you let it in, if you acknowledge it, if you're not trying to be them, and if you're just, allowing yourselves to really be open to a healthy friendship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember, there was a time, you guys were kind of slowing down on the women's circles. And I was having a hard time during that time. I don't remember why, but I was having some sort of a hard time. And I was really kind of like going into a shell. And I remember Brittany texted me like right when it was happening. And she was like, you've been on my mind for days and days. And I feel like something's up with you. I feel like something's happening with you. And I didn't really know Brittany that well. And I was kind of like, do not look into my soul, Brittany. Because I can get really private when I'm in that space. Like, I don't want anyone like intuiting nothing about me. But because we were part of this really transformative group, you were able to see that something was wrong, even though we weren't that close. And then not to like toot my own psychic horn or anything, but then like a year and a half ago or so, when I called Hannah, I kept getting this really strong feeling. And I didn't even know what a podcast was. I'd never listened to a podcast. I thought it was like a YouTube show. But I kept hearing to tell Hannah to start a podcast. And I finally, after like 2 days of it just screaming at me, I finally just texted her. And I was like, Hannah, you should start a podcast. I don't know what that is, but you should. But yeah, that is the kind of magic that happens when we get into these groups where we share each other's soul. We open each other up to new possibilities. And that happens when we are very connected to ourselves as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the group that, just for the audience to clarify, the group that we're talking about is the Sacred Sister Gathering that we had in 2018. Yeah, 2018. Mm-hmm. And then 2019, we transformed it into this Sacred Sister podcast.
Wow. I'm curious, Hannah, if you're able to touch on it from your astrological know-how about when Coral was just saying this. I was like, Cancer rising, that you want to show yourself off and be kind of private and stuff. I feel like I can have those isolated, hermit zones, hermit times too.
Yeah.
Coral is a Scorpio. Your Pluto rising, Coral.
What's Pluto rising? What does that mean?
So your Pluto is right on your ascendant, super duper strong. This is why you have a
kind of like dark and creepy, isn't it?
This is why you have a scorpion tattooed on your neck.
So you're Scorpio rising?
Libra rising with a Pluto
Libra
conjunct the ascendant. So this is also why you're naturally tuned into psychic abilities, because that's what Pluto stands for, Pluto and Neptune. If you have strong Pluto-Neptune in your charts, chances are it's easier for you to tune into the other hidden realms of life. Mm-hmm. Everybody has Pluto and Neptune in their chart, so we in one capacity or another we can all tune into this realm. But if it's like something that is strong and more potent for us in our chart, meaning like connection with our sun, moon, rising sign, the angles, then comes easier for us, so it's not like a struggle to having to develop it, but it's more like an easy flowing thing. So this is what Pluto likes to do. It likes to be very private. So Scorpio, Pluto, we like to be very private and secret about what we do. And it's something, and I'm a Scorpio moon too, and I know it in myself. And actually a friend of mine just said that in the Conscious Life Expo, because I told her, we go to all these different things like the new human and hybrid children, and I just tell her, I have all these experiences with extraterrestrials, and I just tell her all these different things, and she's like, how can you keep this to yourself? Like, how do you do it? And I'm like, that's a good question. I don't know.
I had a really amazing astrology reading from Trisha McCannon one time, and she's an amazing author that I just love. It was like a 3-hour reading, but she did say that I had a lot of Pluto in my chart, and that she equated Pluto to the Phantom of the Opera, the character in the Phantom of the Opera, and how he's like this dude that lives like, I don't know, under the ground of the opera, like in the basement or whatever. And he brings people down to those depths to teach them. But he is kind of a darker figure. And a lot of the time he teaches people, or he needs to learn himself through pain and things like that. But he's an amazing transformative teacher at the same time. And it's kind of fun because a huge part of me always wants to be like these very soft, love and light, dressed in all white, very floaty type people, because I like that. I like that vibe. It's very comforting and soothing. And to be very edgy like I am isn't necessarily how I'd want to be, because I worry that it might turn people off, and people might be like, oh, that girl looks too edgy for me to work with, or she doesn't look like a spiritual coach or someone who would work with spiritual children, and so it can be a conflict a little bit.
I think it's so beautiful though, because it is so necessary. We've been touching on this so much in this podcast, because, the love and light community of like, you have to wear all white and you have to wear your crystal crowns and all that in order to be spiritual. Like, it is so important to have this beautiful yin energy that you embody with dressing dark and having tattoos and doing your thing, because this is who you are. This is what makes you happy, and it's not hurting anybody, and if it triggers someone, then that's their thing, right? Like we've talked about triggers in many episodes, and how much we honor triggers, because like, even I was just saying to my husband yesterday, he triggered me, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry I triggered you. I'm like, don't be sorry. Like, I appreciate these little triggers, because I know, okay, there's something inside of me that wants to be looked at, in whatever way that is. And, when we look at life like that, seeing, okay, this conversation, this is triggering me, there is something inside of you that wants to dive deeper into your psychic abilities. And we all have them. Like, we all have a gut feeling. There is always something that you feel like you may have, that someone's going to call you, and then in the next minute they call you. Like, I feel like so many people have already a sense of it, but just haven't like embraced it and be like, this is part of psychic abilities. This is my sixth sense. And so this is for the audience. If you listen to this and you haven't really dived into this deeper, allow yourself to open up to it, because as we just discussed, like, as soon as we say, yes, I am open to receive, that's when we send it out to the universe of like, I want to learn more about this. I'm open to explore this other realm. I'm open to explore and embrace my gifts.
Yeah, and I want to, just to make sure to get this in there before our conversation is over, because it's the one thing that I always tell people when they want to get stronger in their psychic selves, or they haven't had any experiences and they want to tap into them. So the thing that helped my psychic abilities the most and really changed the game from having it happen sporadically to being able to actually control it, it wasn't getting a teacher. Because some people are gonna be like, well, I don't know anybody who can train me. And you don't use that as an excuse. The thing that helped me the most was starting to meditate, and meditating without like not a guided meditation, nothing like that. Because a guided meditation is very different than just sitting with your thoughts. Meditating in a quiet space with no music and music is okay if it's not distracting, and really just sitting with your thoughts. And once you start to learn to recognize your chatter, and then recognize when it's not chatter, when it's your actual soul talking, then you will be able to turn the key and open up that door to the psychic realms and to actual messages that are coming through. Because it can be hard if you cannot tell the difference between your mind chatter and actual messages, then you are never going to be able to trust yourself to know that you're receiving an actual message. Yeah, I always equate it to, and it's really funny, but I'll tell people it's kind of like if there's a set of twins and maybe they're trying to trick their boyfriend into, like maybe one of them is dating a guy and then he comes to the door and the other one is like, oh, I'm going to pretend I'm you. And try to go on a date with him. If he doesn't know his girlfriend very, very well, he might be able to get tricked into going out with the other twin. You have to really get to know those two voices to start to pick up on your psychic messages that are there for you.
I love that analogy. Yeah, thank you. And I want to say too, since this was coming in while you were talking about what you just said, sometimes the gateway to being able to sit with the self in that way, or for it to be like tantalizing to where you want to, is by starting with the guided meditations too.
Okay. Yeah.
It looks different for everyone. I know that I don't even know where I would be on my meditation game, which is still at the very beginner level for myself, if I hadn't gotten started doing guided meditations first, because I just wasn't even able to sit. I just didn't even know what it was about. I didn't understand it. So really finding a teacher for me, like Sally Kempton and Kia Miller, were my first Kundalini and guided meditation teachers, and really like having them help me calm my mind and just like focus on a few different things, like totally changed my life. And it led me to the place where I am now able to, and I prefer meditating without anything, maybe like binaural audio, but not guided meditations anymore.
Yeah, guided meditations, I recommend them to my clients and my kids, especially when they're trying to do something very specific, like contact one of their guides or, meet a spirit guide, clear their chakras. Like, it can be a very powerful tool because you're almost getting to a trance. And so you can meet like your team through a guided meditation, which can be hard to do when you're just sitting there practicing awareness.
Yeah. I think like the guided meditation is like, that's like the allowing yourself to be guided towards something. And when you're just by yourself, you have to guide yourself and listen at the same time, which can be sometimes really hard. But I also want to just mention that all these tools that we've been discussing, using guided meditation as a tool, using different crystals or altar or tarot cards, these are all great tools when they help us to further develop and access our psychic abilities. I think what the only thing that we have to be aware of and discerning of is when we become addicted to any one of these tools, when we become dependent on any of these tools, when we feel like I can't access my inner voice unless I have my tarot cards, or like I can't access to my inner self unless I have my specific crystal with me. And because then we put the power onto a tool that is outside of ourselves, we become dependent on that. And that's actually takes away the power from us. So I think using tools is so great, and it's super potent and beautiful. But as soon as we become dependent and thinking, okay, this is all I need in order to even be able to access that, that's when we want to take in that. That's how I do it. As soon as I realize, oh my gosh, I need this right now in order to do this, that's when I get the message, okay, so I want to just take this tool away from my life for a moment and not use that and try to get into that place in another way.
So smart,
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm cutting you off. Go ahead.
No, you're totally fine. I just wanted to add on to that a little bit too, because when you look at the chakra system and the seventh chakra being, the knowingness, the ability to tap in, sixth and seventh, that can also be an imbalance, an excessive, like almost spiritual addiction. Not necessarily saying what you do, Hannah, but even needing to glean like some deeper meaning and deeper purpose, like for every single thing that happens to you in your life. It can be so ungrounding, and it can be so toxic in its own ways too, to always need to tie some sort of metaphysical reasoning to every single minute detail and thing that happens to you in your life too. So I just wanted to put that out there as well.
So smart. Also, and just for y'all who are listening, you can get addicted to readings as well, that you are going to a tarot reader, you're going to a psychic, and I will, on my end, I will fire my clients if they start calling me too much and asking for readings about, should I date this guy? Should I date that guy? I'm like, no. I don't do all that. I'm not here to, I'm not a fortune cookie. I'm here to help you make your life better in a real solid way. I'm not here to tell you if you should date this guy and what is this guy thinking, but this other guy, nah. A guy, fine. Relationships, yes, they're super important. All that stuff's important. But if it's very small things that they could easily just try on their own and follow their own instincts and give it a try and see what happens, that's what you need to do. Mm-hmm. The clients that I want to work with are the people who really want to change their life, want to tap into their own soul. I don't want to have clients, 10 years from now asking me the same exact questions. Otherwise, I haven't done my job. If I don't hear from somebody for a year, that's awesome. That means that I actually helped them, and with the addiction thing to psychic tools, I'll tell you, I was addicted, and I've been wanting to write a post about this or something, where I was addicted to meditation. Mm-hmm. Like it was a legit addiction, almost like a sleeping pill. I could not fall asleep unless I sat up in bed and meditated, even if it was just a few minutes. And I remember getting so sick of it, because some days I'd meditate an hour. But then when I got to my bed, if I didn't sit up and try to meditate right before bed, I would not sleep till 2 a.m. And I had to fight to break that, because I was like, I cannot be dependent on anything, even meditation, for something that's supposed to happen naturally,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's so potent when we allow ourselves to take that power back, when we bring that back into ourselves, and then we realize, oh wow, I can do this without that tool that I thought that I need.
One of the tools I need to break myself of is a blindfold, because I cannot get, when I do readings for people, I don't just like, oh, I'm talking to you and here's your reading. I have to get into like a trance. Mm-hmm. And so I will carry around a blindfold in my backpack. Everywhere that I go, I have a blindfold somewhere, because I cannot read without a blindfold. So that is one thing that I'd like to stop, because someday I'm not going to have a blindfold. And what am I going to do? I'm going to be like, oh, sorry, I can't help you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, so fun. So I know that we've been talking a little bit about it, when you've said that you don't want to be like psychically spied on, and you want to have like a psychic shield around it yourself, but also for people who kind of like do start sensing the other realm more, and they start sensing something like negative. So, something that is like more, feels like it's not something you want to have around yourself. What would you say can people do to like psychically protect themselves?
Oh, I have been working with this question for the last couple of months, especially with mothers. I actually posted on a few women's groups that I am a part of, that if their children are having any sort of negative attachments or seeing things that are negative, that I would do a free session with them because it is so near dear to my heart. I don't want these babies being afraid at night and all this kind of thing. So that has been my main focus for the last few months. And what I would say, I mean, there's quite a few different tools that you can use, but what I would say first is that I would make sure that you're clear first. You want to clear your body. And the way that I clear my body and the children's also that I'm working with, or my own, is it's really simple. I will either fill them up with light. I will visualize a small kind of glowing orb in the middle of their chest, and very slowly and deliberately fill all of their body up with light, so that every single, finger and toe and ear and, hair on their little head is filled up with light. And I will command that they be clear. And then after that, I will visualize like a shield around them. And what I do is an iron ball. A lot of people will do like white light, but when I've done readings, I have noticed when I do a white light, I will still pick up things. And so I have created for myself like an iron lung, because I'm like, I need nothing to get in my space when I'm doing this work. And so I'll create like an iron ball around them. Or for my children, as you've seen, I create a little energy egg, like a little egg around them. And I will bless that space that nothing can get inside of that space. So before you go in to do a deep meditation, before you start to try to connect with anything psychically, I would clear myself in that way, or visualize like a waterfall falling over you is another really good one. And then I would protect myself with whatever feels right to you. It does to help to have something that's reflective, because if it's reflective, it's reflecting back and kind of bouncing off of, whatever's coming at you is going to bounce right off of you. And then when you're done doing a deep meditation or any sort of psychic work that you're experimenting with, do it again. Clear your space again. And you can also, command anything that you feel that is in your energetic space or in your home. Like, you have the power to say, I don't want you here, and to call in the very highest and best beings to surround your house and your home. And if you do that with a lot of intention, and the key is doing it with a lot of intention, you say that out loud, nothing's going to happen. You have to really care. You have to really command that happens, and it will.
Thank you for that. Okay, I had a question that popped up whenever you were talking about cleansing it again. And I guess my question is more about like different people picking different things up and what you feel intuitively that is about. Like if someone, has this really beautiful divine space that they do this good, pure, perfect work at, and if someone else were to come along and feel something completely different, feel something like not good and bad and really, really bad, it's like, what's your insight on that?
That's such a fun question. Oh my gosh, we could talk about that for a long time. But, look at my house. Y'all have been to my house. I have pentacles up. I have, all kinds of fun little things. And my house has the best energy, has the most beautiful energy. But when my Mormon parents come over, they think it's weird. And they've mentioned a few times, do you have anything in that house that might be bringing in, negative, this or that, whatever, because their feeling is very different when they see those kinds of things because of their belief system. And so our intuition is filtered through our belief system. Yes. And so I might go into, I don't know, back when I was Mormon, for example, I went to a pagan church and I felt it was like super weird. And I walked away all freaked out and whatever. And now I'm doing priestessing at that pagan church. And I love it. And every time I go, I feel so, at home and comforted. And it really is your belief system that's going to filter out your intuitions. And it's not saying that the intuition that they're having is wrong or whatever, but for them, what is in alignment for their soul is something different than what is in alignment for mine.
Yes.
And then being very religious might be what is for their highest and best. That might be what is right. And so when they come in my space, that is not for their highest and best. That is not something that's going to resonate with them. And that's okay. And also at the same time, you can also have people who have, and this doesn't happen as much as it being the beliefs, but you can have people that have their own kind of negative attachments, because a lot of people do. And sometimes it's temporary, but people will have negative attachments. And so that they will feel those negative attachments will be triggered by being in a high vibe place. But that happens less than just, the belief thing, which I think is a lot more common.
I think it's so important to touch on this, because I feel like in the spiritual community, it's so easy to be like, I sense you have a negative thing attached to you, and I'm going to heal you from this. I'm going to take it from you now. And I'm like, wait, it hasn't happened to me personally, but I know from a lot of friends and people around me that has happened, that someone said that to them. And I always feel like I want to be like, hey, wait, like, I almost, just like as you were saying, you felt violated by your mom just coming in. I feel like that's what people do when they just say, I sense a negative being, I'm going to cleanse you from this now. Because like, who's to say that they don't want to have that being in their life, and who's to say that that's being is negative to them,
Yeah.
It's an overstepping of boundaries on someone, and you haven't had it personally happen to you, but I have. And it does feel like a violation, because we, especially in the spiritual community, it's like people can be so convicted by these feelings and feel like they know. And it can very much come across like a, just such a conviction, such a deep belief that if you are conflicting to that and they're not willing to meet you where you're at, it can be like, oh, honey, like, I bless you and I bless your space. And, if you don't want to move through this dark energy, then that's your, healing to move through or whatever. It's just such a fascinating thing. Yeah. I mean, it can be a fascinating thing, but if they're willing to talk about it, then that's something that, you could come to see eye to eye on, and at least open that dialogue, because, it's really important to never be so convicted by your own beliefs or your own feels or whatever, and always be open to, wow, this is just my experience. What's yours? What is your experience? Let's be curious together and never come to such a resolute conclusion about stuff, especially this unquantifiable stuff in the etheric realm, that, that we just think that we got it.
Yeah, I actually have had 2 times I've had people message me that I'm not very close with, that I know, just casually. And they've said that they have gotten an intuition that I need to do a project with them. And that, me and them need to go forward and write a book together or something, that they were told that this needs to happen. And I'm like, no. And it's just like, I tell my kids and my clients, but I always bring up my kids and my clients because they're like the same. But I always tell them, it doesn't matter what I tell you, even if I'm giving you like a session and I have done a session for you. And it's just like the Buddha had this quote that says, it doesn't matter who has said it. Even if I have said it, don't believe anything unless it is in alignment with your own common sense and your own intuition. And that goes for me too. Even with Mooney, my little 6-year-old, I'm like, if she has a different intuition about something that, I feel strongly about, she needs to trust her little self. I am in no way an authority figure. I do not trump you as your own authority figure, and nobody should encroach on people's energy in that way and try to intuit for them or read them without their permission ever. Except Teresa Caputo when she's like at the grocery store, because that's legit.
I love Long Island media.
I love her.
First got me into all this stuff. Oh my gosh, It's so good. And you know what? Since you just touched on that, who was it? It was Jamie Oliver or Stephen Colbert. It might have been Stephen Colbert. It was one of those two that one day they had somebody on and they were talking about debunking psychics and TV shows that feature psychic mediums and what bull they are and how people really manipulate their clients by, making them think that they have these powers and stuff. And he said something that was so poignant in that segment, which was, it was, I mean, imagine if it was real, it would alter our state of, you know, the world as we know it. And I think we're not even ready to realize that either. We wouldn't be ready to take that on either. So it's like people feel like they almost have to be super cynical and critical of it if they don't have the energetic space to even consider that life could be a different way, because it would be too mind-blowing for them. It would change, it would uproot the entire belief system of how life is.
It's just like with the alien thing. We don't have to get into aliens, but you know, the government keeping like alien stuff from us, because like, what if everybody knew that all this stuff was happening and everyone freak out and the world would change in an instant, and people aren't ready for that. Some people aren't. So same thing. Yeah.
And thanks, Coral. We're definitely going to feature someone and talk about aliens now, because Hannah and I have both had our own experiences with aliens.
Oh my God, that's rad.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny too, because 8 years ago, when I met my husband and he was telling me, yeah, extraterrestrials are real, obviously, I was like, no, you're crazy. And now I'm like, duh. It's so funny. It's so funny how we can judge people. Like I've done it. I'm in the same boat. Like I see people doing their thing and I'm like, judging a book by its cover. Done the same thing with astrology too. First thing I heard of astrology, I was like, don't believe that. All the people that have, are Leo or the same thing, like doesn't resonate. But I haven't opened the book yet. As soon as I opened that book of astrology, I realized, oh wow, it's so much deeper than the surface knowledge that is out there. And it's so much, in regards to psychic abilities, in regards to all that stuff beyond the veil. So much deeper, and it's so individual, our experience in it too, and how we can access that for us personally. But I have like a little question that is not necessarily part of the flow that we were talking about, but it goes back to where you were saying with your grandma and mom and how they were able to look into the future and see certain things that are, prophetic dreams, and see things that are then ended up happening. So as we go deeper into this feeling of there are so many future possibilities, and the future is not set in stone, and to a certain degree there are certain things that are destined to happen, but other things are part of our free will, that we can tune into different dimensions and we can shift dimensions, and even just like the people that we align ourselves with shift our future in a sense, and we take a different route. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that. When you do have prophetic dream about something that happens in the future, is there a way for you to say, I don't want that to happen, so I'm going to make a different choice now in order to attract a different kind of future?
I do think that is possible. But I also think it's yes and yes. I feel like there are certain things that are almost like they are karmically supposed to happen. They are going to happen. We have a few big monuments in our life that are supposed to happen. I'll tell you, and I don't think I've said this out loud, but I think that there was a possibility that I was not going to meet Ray and marry him and have my 2 last babies. I think that there was a great possibility that I could have stayed with my first husband. And I think in some universe, we're still together. And sometimes I'm like, hey guys, I hope you guys are doing well. I'll give us a little shout out because I feel that, And so I feel like, yeah, there are some big monuments that are supposed to happen in your life, but a lot of it is free will. I would say maybe 80% of it is free will. And so I do tell my clients when I'm working with them and we see something that is not the best, that they can change the energy to an extent, and for the most part they can. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. And I love that we touched on that, on those parallel dimensions, because this is science. This is literally, quantum physics. We know that there are parallel multiverses going on at the same time, and there are different versions of us. And this is also, I think, kind of helps people to also connect with, how can I still connect with people who are not necessarily incarnated in this lifetime anymore, but they're incarnated in another timeline, and sometimes you can even tune into that timeline, and the people who have crossed over in this lifetime show you what would have happened if they stayed alive, you know? And
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I've had so many dreams about that where I feel like they're directly from my mom. And, I see that timeline if she had survived, and it is not the way that she thought that she was going to heal from treatment. And my mom has really heavy Virgo in her astrology chart. She very much always cared about the way that she looked, and she always had her makeup on. She always presented herself in the way that she wanted to. And her hair texture is completely different. And a lot of times she can't walk. Like sometimes she can walk in her dreams, but sometimes she just is so frail that she just can't. And her face is drained of the prana, the life energy that, it once had, and everything is different. And honestly, that is so much more traumatic for the rest of my family to handle, because in these dreams, usually we're at parties and stuff, and people are having mental breakdowns because my mom was such an important figure in our life, and everyone knew her to be this, effervescent, vibrant, super spiritual being. And this is just different now. And that's something that's really helped me find peace with her passing too, because my sister has the same dreams, and usually we have them on the same night. When my mom comes and visits us, she will visit either me and my sister, my dad and my sister, me and my dad the same night. And it's beautiful. Or me and my niece, or me and my nephew. Two people dream about my mom on the same night all the time. And it's not to say that it happens every single night, but the times that it does, we have a family group chat where we tell each other our dreams about mom. And we share stuff like this all the time, that it's different. So thank you for talking about the timeline. And I really want to say too, I really want to honor your time, Coral, because I know that we said about 90 minutes or so, and it's been about 120 almost.
Oh, really? Okay. Passed fast. This has been so fun.
I know. And there are so many stories that we had written down that we hadn't touched on yet. And so many, different aspects that we wanted to touch on, but I'm really calming myself because I was wanting to bring a lot more structure to this episode, but it didn't go that way. So I'm really breathing into the fact that everything got said the way that it needed to be said, and it's landing in the ears of the audience as it needs to. So there's that.
Yes. And I think it went exactly as it was meant to. I feel like we touched on all the clairs, and we shared our stories and shared how we can protect ourselves from negative energies, how we can dive more deeper into it. We had little action guides and exercises that I invite you listeners to maybe look deeper into that. We're going to add that book from Doreen Virtue into the description so people can look deeper into those exercises as well. And now for the closing, let's see, what is coming up for you, Coral, and where can people find you if they have psychically gifted children, or if they are, ready to dive deeper into their psychic gifts and they want to connect with you? How can they do it?
So you can find me on Instagram. That's a really easy way to find me. And it's all under Coral Newberry. I have my website, coralnewberry.com, and I'm on Facebook as well, which I love. But there's only a certain amount of friends you're allowed on there. So I'm filling up on my friends. I need to slow it down. But so yeah, you can find me on there. And the thing that I do readings for people, but what I am really trying to move more towards is teaching. If it's for adults, if I'm working with adults, what I have been doing is one-on-one classes. And so we'll do them over Zoom, where we'll do one-on-one classes, and I will specifically create a class for that person to help them with whatever they are going through. So it's almost a mini reading, because I do tap in and ask, what does this person need to know? And then I create a class so that they're walking away with a ton of different tools that they can use at home and start to do this work on their own, which is really what I want for people, to be able to do it on their own and not come to me for readings. That's my goal. And I'm also creating a program, and it's almost done, and I'm about ready to start marketing it. But if you contact me, I can give you more details. And it is specifically for psychic and just very intuitively gifted children between the ages of 7 and 15. I am working with children who are getting ready for junior high and high school, because these very psychically gifted children I feel are the ones that are having the hardest time adjusting when they get into school. And with the high suicide rates that we have with children of that age group now, little like 11-year-olds, this happening to. And I feel like because these very sensitive little people are being put in these very rough grown-up environments, and it is too much for their little systems. And so it's an entire course from clearing your child to giving them tools to use at school so that they can protect themselves, to giving them ways to sleep better and not be afraid of the dark, and clear your house if you feel like there's something in it. And really fun psychic games that I play with my own kids are in there. And it's very, very impactful. And it's every single thing that I have used in the last 23 years with my own children to help them to grow spiritually. So let me know if you're interested. It's pretty amazing. I'm so excited about it.
It sounds super amazing. Wow. It's so needed. So needed.
It's so needed. And there's nothing else out there like that. Nobody else is doing that. And it is really going to help your child and yourself, because it's for mothers and their children. So it is also focusing on mothers and helping your energy so that you can better help your child.
And I just want to say too, a little ping just went off for single fathers that are raising their children as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Beautiful. Just accessing that divine feminine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being able to really hold space for the child. Thank you. And we'll definitely be having the details inside of the description for this episode. And now for our sacred questions, huh?
Yeah.
So at the end of every episode, we always ask these 3 questions to our guests, and you can answer them in a shorter format, kind of just like whatever it is that's coming to your mind. So our first is, what does sacred mean to you?
Sacred is anything. You know what? Sacred is everything. That's what it means to me. Everything is sacred. But when I feel that very strong feeling of sacred, it is when something brings me peace and resonates with my soul. That's when I remember that everything is sacred.
Beautiful. What does having a sacred sister mean for you?
I feel like it is someone also that resonates with my soul, that I can trust, that I know is there for me and has my very highest and best interest at heart and wants to see me grow, wants to see me shine, and is just as excited when something amazing happens to me as when it happens to her.
So beautiful. And you just did a bestie ceremony with your best friend.
I did with Serena. I just love her so much. That was so fun. So fun.
So beautiful.
And what are some ways that you turn something normal or mundane into something magical or sacred?
Oh,
I feel like that's your whole life.
Yeah. My little 7-year-old just came to me the other day, and she had a little bracelet. She had a little charm bracelet. And I said, Violet, that's so beautiful. You never wear jewelry. Why are you wearing that? And she goes, it's protecting me, Mama. I blessed it. I put it in my hand and I blessed it, that when I go to school, it's going to make me feel good. And to transform something from like lead into gold really is just your intention and you wanting it to be different. And you can do that with anything, just with your intention, with maybe a short prayer, or like with the little Violet, putting it in your hand and blessing it.
Oh,
sweetie, just love her.
I feel like that's such a profound nugget of wisdom. Who is it? I feel like even I heard Hannah say this just recently about how even putting your shoes on and tying your shoes can be a sacred act if you make it so. It's like, it's just intentionality really is everything. And I think we can overcomplicate and oversimplify it. I mean, both ways. We can think that it's just too simple to actually let it in to change our lives. And then we can also think that we need too many things outside of ourselves, or more time, or more this, or more that. And it just is an illusion.
Yeah.
Yes. So beautiful. I love that you just said that, because that's ultimately the whole puts it all together in the psychic abilities, because literally we can go into one extreme and just oversimplify it of like, oh, that dream doesn't matter, that little hunch doesn't matter, or like overcomplicate it in a sense, I need to go to psychic school in order to really access my abilities, you know? So beautiful.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having this conversation with us, Coral. It's truly been such a blessing.
Oh, I love you guys so much. Thank you for always supporting me in all that I do and always being my cheerleaders with all the good things that happen to me in my life.
Oh, thank you.
We're your sacred sisters.
You are. Yeah. You're the original ones.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And we hope that you have a really great rest of your day and your
Happy Valentine's Day.
Your healing babes. Yeah, we're recording this on Valentine's Day. So I hope that you have a blessed little celebratory day. And we will be talking to you soon.
Okay, cool. Love you guys.
Thank you. Love you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
I hope this episode was as much fun to you as it was for us. Really, really diving into those psychic abilities. I hope that you are using the action guide and find it helpful for your life. And if so, let us know. We would love to hear from you. You can also add us on Instagram at Sacred Sister Podcast, and we can connect there on a deeper level as well. And of course, always we love to receive any kind of feedback, reviews, ratings. We love all of that because this is something where we know what content resonates with you and how we can be of greater service to you as your sacred sisters. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Namaste.